Hey, okay, so today's daf is daf Chav Zayin. We're holding on 4 lines from the bottom on Chav Vav Amid Beis, and the Gemara continues. Rehuda Omer ad Arba Shos. We said in the Mishnah until when one can say Kriya Shema. I'm sorry, Shachris in the morning. So we had the opinion of Rehuda, which was until 4 hours into the day. So the Gemara wants to know. And this is going to segue into a whole discussion. There's actually going to be a very important discussion in understanding shows manios, halachic hours, and such. So the Gemara asks, Yibaylahu, I ask you a question. Ad va'ad bichlal dilma ad v'loy ad bichlal. Okay? Now, when Yehuda says that one can say Shachris until 4 hours into the day, we explained that these hours are halachic hours, right? Which is between from sunrise to sunset. The day is split into 12 halakim, right? 12 quote unquote hours, even though they're not 60-minute hours. Almost. Pretty much never 60-minute hours, but they're divided into these 12 parts. So he says until the 4th halachic hour of the day. So the question is, when he says until the 4th hour, does he mean up until the 4 hours, meaning 3 hours into the day up until the 4th hour, or including the 4th hour, okay, to the end of the 4th hour? So the Gemara wants to know, ad v'ad b'chlal is inclusive of including the 4th hour, or ad v'lei b'chlal really to the end of the 3rd hour up until the 4th hour. So Tashma, come in here. Yehuda Omer, Yehuda says plaga mincha. Now, when we had about mincha, Yehuda says that one could say mincha until can daven mincha until plag ha-mincha. Okay, now, Plag HaMincha we said is half of Mincha. And we explained that there's a Mincha Gedola and a Mincha Katana. The Mincha Gedola starts from 12 and a half hours, again, these halachic hours into the day. That's the Mincha Gedola from then until sunset, and until the 12th hour of the day. And we said there's Mincha Katana, which starts at 9. We said, what was it, 9 hours into the day. Right, this is what our discussion was yesterday, and goes from there. So we said plaga mincha means half of mincha. So the Gemara wants to know. Rehuda says until plaga mincha. So I amr bishlama ad v'leya b'chalal. If you're going to say Rehuda's opinion is when he says a time, he means up until that time, not including that time. That would make sense. Why? Hainu deika ben Rehuda l'Rabbanan. That would be the difference between Rehuda and Rabbanan, because Rehuda says you have until plag hamincha, until half the mincha. And the Gemara is assuming now that Rehuda's opinion of half the mincha is up until half of the mincha katana, which we said is 10 hours and 45 minutes into the day. Right, from then that's mincha. That's up until then is when you could say mincha. So if he says that up until then, but not including then that would because the Chacham say until the evening, right, at erev, which is another about an hour, 2 hours and 15 minutes later, right? Or I'm sorry, an hour and 15 minutes later from when his shita is. When he says until Plaga Mincha, but he really means until Plaga Mincha, including Plaga Mincha. That would be until the evening. Rabbi Yehuda Hain Rabbanan. There wouldn't be any differentiation between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. So the Gemara says Elamai must be what we can deduce is that ad v'loy ad bichlal. That when Yehuda's opinion is when he says an hour, it means until, but not including that time. So it says the Gemara Ema Seifa. In our Mishnah we had, at the end of the Mishnah, it said V'shel Tefillah of Milsef, one could do Kol Hayom. That was the Tanakama, the Rabbi's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda argued, and he said, Ad Sheva shows that one can only daven Musaf until 7 hours into the day. Vitanya, and now this is the problem over here. The problematic brisa, because the brisa says, if one has in front of him 2 prayers that he must pray, okay, it's a Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, and he didn't daven Shachris yet, and he's late with Shachris, okay, and now he has to daven Musaf. I'm sorry, he hasn't yet daven Musaf, okay, and now he's gone into Mincha land. He's gone into past the time. He's gone into the time when Mincha starts, right, which we said is 6.5 hours into the day according to the rabbis, right, and now it's let's say 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he has to daven Mincha and Musaf. Which one should he pray first? So the Brachos says, Mispal Shal Mincha, first he should do Mincha, Achar Kach Shal Musaf. A little bit counterintuitive, but the Gemara we have a concept of Tadr V'She'ena Tadr, which means one's more common, and commonality, in especially in halacha, gives a certain preference. So the fact that mincha is prayed every day, and Musaf is only prayed on Rosh Chodesh and holidays and Shabbos, means that mincha is more Tadir, more regular, and its regularity defines it as being preference, being the one that one must pray first. And Rehuda says, Mispal Shal Musaf, he should says, I agree with Tadr Shein Tadr, but in this particular instance, you should daven Musaf first, then daven Mincha. Why? Shazu Iveres, Vizu Ein Iveres. Because again, according to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, Musaf can only be prayed not the whole day, like the rabbi's opinion, like Tanakama, but it can only be prayed until 7 hours into the day. So you better hurry and daven Musaf, because otherwise you're going to miss the Musaf time. Okay, you could daven Mincha the whole rest of the afternoon, or at least until Plag Mincha, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, now this is the problem. So if when Rabbi Yehuda says a certain time, he means including that time. So when he says until 7 hours into the day, he doesn't mean up until the end of the 6 hour. He means including, right, the 7th hour. Then that's how you could find shtei tefillas, 2 prayers, that occur at the same time. Why? Because now it's between 12:30, meaning 6.5 hours into the day, till 7 hours. There's a half-hour leeway time of overlap where one could have the obligation of Musaf and Mincha in front of him on his lap, and he has to decide which one to in fact do first. But if you're going to say ad v'lo b'chlal, that when he says a time, it means up until that time, but not including that time. So how are you ever going to find the Musaf and Mincha prayers to be at the same time? Responsibility comes, okay, which starts at 12.5 hours, 6.5 hours into the day. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if it means up until 7 hours, means really up to the end of the 6 hour. Overlap. It's going to be a half hour until the responsibility, the obligation of mincha, even in fact, becomes upon you. So how could that be? Elamai must be. We could deduce the deduction is that the inference. Not bechlal, that it's actually inclusive, his words. So the Gemara says kasha reisha. Again, that's our problem in the first place, that we said, when it comes to plaga mincha, what's the difference in mincha time between Rehuda and the Rabbanan? So the Gemara says, kasha reisha, ma'ika between Rehuda and the Rabbanan. So the Gemara answers like this. Your assumption in the reisha was that Rabbi Yehuda, who says you have until plaga mincha, and we said it has to be up until, not including, otherwise he would say up until the evening, was talking about plaga mincha achrona kamar, which is the small mincha katana, which is at the end, right before the sunset, in that hour, 2 hours range. But it says the Gemara, you're wrong. Really, Rabbi Yehuda says plaga mincha means up until plaga mincha of the larger mincha gedola, which starts at 6.5 hours into, and plag of that. Okay, now that time, when he says, if we say ad bechlal, inclusive, means it would go up until these 9 hours into the day. Okay, but the question is how we define the word ad. So the Gemara says, "Mi savrid dehai plaga mincha plaga achrona kamar." Who says Rabbi Yehuda holds that the plaga mincha is the later plaga mincha? Perhaps plaga rishona kamar. He's really talking about the first plag, the mincha gedola. V'hachi kamar. This is what he meant to say. Amos nafik plag rishona. When does the first plag go out? V'ayel plag achrona, in the second plag, the second half of mincha come in. Mechinaf ki yud alef shos chaser. 7 hours minus a quarter, again 10 hours and 45 minutes into the day comes, at that time, that's when the plag mincha achrona starts. But that's when you have until mincha, but not that adva bechlal would mean until the evening. Okay, so that's the Gemara. Rav Nachman Afanana Mitanina. We also have a supporting a Mishnah that's going to be a proof for Rabbi Yehuda that one has until 4 hours into the day, because it says that really ad va'ad bichlal, right? That includes the time that one says until 4 o'clock means including the hour of 4 o'clock, because we have a Mishnah that says in Idias. Now Idias we're going to see starting today a bit, but tomorrow really on Chavches, the whole Idias was Bo Bayom, was a day, special day in Jewish history when all of the Mishnayos that were taught on that day were in fact Koveas halacha, okay, because it was a special monumentous occasion when Elazar Nazari came in, and it was a special day. So Idias is a Masechta that we have that all the halachas are in fact that's the psak that's given, that's what's written there. So it's considered the choicest of the Mishnayos because it's in fact the halacha. So we have a Mishnah that says Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Heyid Chamisha Devarim. He gave witness about 5 things. What were the 5 things? And now the Gemara is going to tell us 5 pretty, I don't say random, but pretty varied concepts in Torah halacha and halacha law that were instituted in one day. And the last one's going to be for our purposes. So the first one was Shemimanis Akatana, that we teach the daughter to refuse, and this means that the Torah gives a father the right to marry his daughter at any age before she's 12 years old. Right, so it has to be a discussion. Has to be at least 10 or 6 or whatever. But basically, if the father died or she was divorced or widowed, and her father's died. Okay, now there's no father to marry her off. The Chachamim, the rabbis, gave the girl's mother and or the oldest brother the right to marry her off. Okay, but these weddings are considered rabbinic in nature, and she has to be at least 10 years old, at least 6 years old if she knows the concept of marriage. Now, the early commentators explain that the marriage is the Rabbah. Is we teach her to refuse, and the halacha is because the whole nature of the marriage is rabbinic. When she reaches an age of when she becomes a nara, right, where it was when she has these two pubic hairs, and now she's considered halachically going into a stage of adulthood. She could refuse, and she doesn't even need a divorce. And actually, limafreya, retroactively, her wedding and marriage becomes annulled and void retroactively. So we teach the girls that she could do this. If she's not happy in her marriage. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is that we could allow a woman to get remarried on one aid, even though we know that we need usually two witnesses for this kind of thing. But if one aid came, if a woman found one aid that said, one witness that said that yes, in fact, I saw your husband, in the faraway lands, and he in fact died, and now you're permitted to remarry, the Rabbanan actually allowed her with just one aid. This special kula, again, the commentaries explain that because she's going to make sure that this is in fact the truth, because if it's not the truth and her husband shows up a week later or a month or a year later, she not only is forbidden to her original husband, but she's actually forbidden to the new guy as well. So she's going to be very careful. So we're enough that she would only remarry if she was really careful and really sure. And the third din was of the Tarnagol Sheniskal B'Yushalayim Al Shaharagas Nefesh. The concept is that we know Shor Sheniskal, but Tarnagol Sheniskal, even any animal that does certain things of damage. Specifically, there was a Tarnagol, a chicken that was a rooster chicken that received the death penalty of skila, of stoning, because it pecked a child to death in the soft spot. Rashi explains the soft spot, and it pecked him to death. And the concept of Nisach Hayayin, we know when everyone brings actually bring a mincha offering together with it, and there's certain libations of wine that's to be poured, and we know that yayin, when does it take on the characteristics of wine, is from when is 40 days, at least 40 days after the grapes were hand, or we say in this case a foot stepped on. Okay, so and then the last one is Val Tamid Shel Shachar. He gave testimony about the Tamid Shel Shachar, which is the carbon, the Tamid that was brought daily. Shekarav Be'ar Bashos, that was brought in the fourth hour. So Shema Minav is brought in the fourth hour, not up until the fourth hour. Ad Ve'ad Bechlal is inclusive. Shema Minav. Amar Rav Kahana Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is in fact like Rabbi Yehuda. Hoyel V'Tznam Bechirta Kavasei. Since we learned it in the Bechirta, which is the chosen ones in the Mishnayos, which is the Idias. Okay, so now the Gemara goes back to this concept. Tamid Shel Shachar Shekar Bar B'Shos, and that's why he says until 4 hours into the day one can say Shachars. Okay, so the first line, the Gemara asks, Man Tana Lahaditznan, who is the author of this mission that we learned? It says V'cham Hashemesh V'Namas. There's a pasuk in Shemais in reference to the manna, that the sun got hot and it melted, it began to melt. Okay, and we said by Arba shows. And that was at 4 hours into the day. So the Gemara asks, Ata Omer Barber shows, you say it occurred at 4 hours into the day. Maybe it was actually 6 hours into the day, like the Chachamim say that one could daven Shachris until 6 hours into the day, because that's considered all of the morning. Okay? So the Gemara says no. Because why? Because Omer, when the verse says Kechom Hayom, right? This is the pasuk when Hashem appeared to Avram, Kechom Hayom, in the heat of the day. Heat of the day is Sheshos. Okay, that's 6 hours into the day. But when the sun gets hot and the mun melted, and again the reference is, we know that the mun melted at the end of the morning. So if it melted at 4 hours into the day, that would seem to be conclusive proof that the morning ends at 4 hours and one can't daven shachars after that. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Oh ma hamani mekayim." So it says the Chacham Hashemesh v'nimas. I'm sorry, Kachayim Hayom Arei Sheshos Emar hamani mekayim. What can I establish? V'cham Hashemesh v'nimas. The sun got hot and it melted. That's by Arbashas. Money. Who is that like? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, lo Rabbanan. According to Rabbi Yehuda, not according to Rabbanan. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda at Arbashas. Okay, that if the month started melting in the fourth hour, we already said ad vad bechlal, that Rehuda holds that you have all the way through the fourth hour to say shachris, because that's considered the morning, then the mun wouldn't have been melting in the fourth hour. It's still a viable time to go and pick it up and bring it home. So it must be that that's not like Rabbi Yehuda, because it's all for an hour. And it can't be like the Rabbanan, because Rabbanan hold you still have another at least 2 hours till that's still considered morning, until Chatzos, like we said. So the Gemara says, the loy Rabbi Yehuda, loy Rabbanan, I Rabbi Yehuda ad arba shos, nami tzafrahu, until including the fourth hour is considered morning. And I Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, Chatzos nami tzafrahu, until you have all the way until midday, that's considered morning. So the Gemara says two alternatives. Ibay Seima Rabbi Yehuda could fit with Rabbi Yehuda, and Ibay Seima Rabbanan, it could even fit with the Rabbanan. How? Because Ibay Seima Rabbanan, Amar Kra, the verse says, Baboker, Baboker. The verse says there that they picked the mun, morning, Ish kefi achloi v'cham hashemesh v'nomas. Okay? Now, what's the repetition of the word morning? So the purpose is chalkel l'shnei bakar, actually divided into 2 mornings. Okay, there's the morning in reference to when they from 6 in the morning, from the first part of the morning till 3 hours into the day, and from then another 3 hours when it started melting. But the first 3 hours they would pick the mun or gather the mun. But that's a special din. But really, the morning, for halachic purposes, for saying shachris, is all the way until chatzos, according to the Rabbanan. So ibay zema, that's the Rabbanan. Baboker chalkel l'shnei bakar. They divided into 2 separate mornings. Ibay zema Rabbi Yehuda, high biker, the yisrael, the extra bikers. Specifically there to tell you that really the morning goes including the 4th hour. But here, biker, that it ended with the end of the 3rd hour, right? And the 4th hour started to melt. Tekuli alma mia, everyone agrees. Shemesh v'nomas is ba'arba shos is in the 4th hour. My mashma, how do you see it from there? The verse says, "V'cham hashemesh v'nomas ezu shemesh cham v'atzel tzonin." When is the time that the sun is hot but the shade is still cool? Okay, now when is the shade still cool? That's going to be 4 hours into the day. Okay, because by 6 hours into the day, by midday it's even going to be hot in the shade. Okay, that's the understanding of this Gemara. So the Gemara says, "Tfilas hamincha erev." We said the mincha you have until the evening. So Amalei Rav Chizda Rav Yitzchak. Rav Chizda said to Rav Yitzchak, "Kasamar Rav Kahana." Over there by Shachris, we said halacha Rav Yehuda. Ha'ilitz nam b'chirtav kasei. We had a reference to Rav Yehuda up until 4 hours into the day, and therefore we said the halacha is like him when it comes to Shachris, and we can actually daven Shachris 4 hours into the day. Hachamai. What about by mincha? So the Gemara says, "Ishtik v'lei midi." He didn't answer him anything. Okay, he was silent. Didn't know the halacha. So Amar Rav Chizda says, Nech zianan. Let us see midarav. We can see from Rav. Why? Midarav masli shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos miba'od yom. Okay, so Rav used to daven the prayers of Friday night on erev Shabbos when it was still day. So what do you see? Shema mina halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Must be that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that one can daven the mincha prayer only until plag ha-mincha, right? And from that time and forth, it's no longer the time of mincha, and the time of Ma'ariv comes. And therefore Rav would take in Shabbos early and daven Ma'ariv even before it was literally dark outside, even before seemingly Zman Arvis, because it's no longer mincha. So that would make sense. So the Gemara says that's Shema mina halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, no, wait a minute. Ad Rabbah, just the opposite. Mid Rav Yehuna v'Rabbanan. Rav Huna Rabbanan le'av matzli ad orta. They would wait specifically until the evening to daven on Friday night. So Shema mina ain't halacha Rabbi Yehuda. With halacha is like the Rav, and it's not like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, Hasha delay imra hilchos alei kamar v'lei kamar. Since we don't have a clear cut, defined answer about this, a fascinating concept in halacha that one who does like this one could do like this one, and one who does like this one could do like this one. Meaning that this is a big discussion, obviously, in the commentaries where we take in Shabbos early and we daven Ma'ariv before the nightfall, right? So the brought down halacha is all discussion here, but there is this concept that if it's what one does regularly, so you can actually choose to do it a certain way and then take upon yourself to do it a different way, meaning that you're going to take it to be night and you can actually switch off. So that's an interesting note over here. The Gemara continues. Rav ikla lebei Ganiva. Rav went up to the house of Ganiva. V'tzali shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. Okay, he was davening a Shabbos davening, like we just said, Friday night davening the Ma'ariv be'erev Shabbos when it was still not yet dark. V'havimatz Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba la'achori. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba was davening behind him. behind Rav. V'siyam Rav finished. V'loy peski l'suluse de Rav Yirmiyah. He didn't stop the davening of Rav Yirmiyah, meaning he stood still. He didn't walk. We have the halacha of walking 3 steps back, saying Shalom b'Reimo v'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. He didn't disturb the prayer of Rav Yirmiyah, and he waited till he finished. So the Gemara says, Shema Mina Tlas. We learn 3 things from here. Tars Chaim. This is the concept from the Rebbe. We learn 3 concepts. What are they? Shema Mina Mispal Adam Shal Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. We learn that, first of all, that one could daven Shabbos davening on Friday night on Erev Shabbos when it's not yet dark. V'Shema Mina. We also learn from here Mispal Talmud Achori Rabbi that a student could daven behind his Rebbe. That it's usher to walk in front of people who are davening. Okay, the Gemara says Messiah Rishum Levi. A side point is a proof of Rishum Levi. Rishum Levi also la'avra keneged mispalin. It's forbidden to walk in front of people who are davening. Says the Gemara. Wait a minute, is that so? 3 lines from the bottom. V'harav Ami v'Rav Asi chalfi. Rav Ami Rav Asi did in fact pass in front of people who were davening Shmona Esrei. When I answers Rav Ami Rav Asi chutz la'Rav Amis hu dechalfi. They would be outside of 4 cubits space. A distance, and therefore is permitted. Okay, 4 amas is a defined place of makams, considered like one's in front of the Shekhinah there. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. For Rav Yirmiyah heichad halchi, how could Rav Yirmiyah daven behind his Rebbe? Rav Yehuda Rav lo'elam al yispal el adam. One should not daven like keneged rabbi, not opposite his Rebbe, meaning right next to him, because it shows, like Rashi says, that you're equal to them. V'lo achori rabbi, not behind his Rebbe, either because it looks like you're bowing to your Rebbe, or it's also a form of showing that you're even to him, according to Rashi. V'tanya Rebbe Elazar Aimer hamispal achori rabbi, one who davens behind his Rebbe. Okay, V'naisin Shalom Rabbi, one who says hello to his rabbi without saying hello Rebbe. V'machzor Shalom Rabbi, one who says Aleichem Shalom Rebbe. Aleichem Shalom without saying the Rebbe part. V'acholik al shivasat Rebbe, or Shal Rabbi, one who opens his own breakaway yeshiva from his Rebbe without his Rebbe's permission. V'ha'omer davar shleishama mipi Rabbo, and one who says something without saying specifically that it's not in the name of his Rebbe, because the Pashut understanding is one who says over Torah, they would have a Rebbe Muvak, and if he would say something without quoting a name, a source of where his halacha comes from, everyone assumes it comes from his Rebbe. So if he says something that he didn't hear from his Rebbe and doesn't articulate that this is not from my Rebbe, in all of these things, he causes the divine province, the divine Shechina to leave the Jewish people. So you see, how did Rav Yirmiyah Rabba daven behind his Rebbe? So my answer is Shani Rav Yirmiyah Rabba the Talmud Chaverhu, because his state he wasn't just a student, he was a Talmud Chaver, which is the concept is a Chaver is a friend and a Talmud is a student, so he was a student friend, so to speak. So he wasn't a pure student because they learned more together. He learned from him, but also together from him. Okay, so the Gemara says, and how can I prove that he was a Talmud Chaver? He wasn't a straight student, and it wasn't considered either like it looks like he was bowing to his Rebbe or Yura, because we have a statement that was made to we have a quote that one time Rav Yirmiyah Rabba told Rav, Mi badalt, did you in fact stop? Now this is the little backdrop over here. There was a story where they took in Shabbos on Erev Shabbos, okay, and he went into the Beis HaMerchatz, and he went and he taught and he taught the halachas to them, and after they came out and they stopped doing malacha. So we'll see in a minute. The Gemara is going to get into exactly what the case was, but he told them in a language of Umi badalt, did you stop? Did you refrain from doing malacha? He didn't say Umi badalt mar. Did you Rebbe stop? So the fact he didn't say it like that must be he was a Talmud Chaver. Okay, he was a Talmud friend. So Amar Lehi told him back in Bedilna, I did in fact stop. V'loy Amar mi Bedil mar. Did you Rebbe stop? Umi Badil, and then the Gemara goes into the story. What was the story? Did he in fact cease from doing malacha? Amar Avim Rav says Pamachas Ispal Rebbe Shel Shabbos Berev Shabbos. One time Rebbe davened a Shabbos on Erev Shabbos Nichas Lemerchatz, and he actually went into the bathhouse after V'yatzav Shanalan Pirk, and he taught us a parak. And it wasn't dark yet. So how would he go into the Beis HaMerchatz, to the bathhouse, which is forbidden to do? Amar Rav Ahu Nichas La'aziyah. That was when he went into the bathhouse. That was for a sweat. That way he wasn't actually going to dip into the pools of water, which would be forbidden to do on Shabbos. He only went in to receive the sweat, but Kodim Gezerah Ham, and that was before the Gezerah was made that it's usher for the Rabbanan made a Gezerah that's usher for one to go in for sweat purposes as well. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Any is that sova Abaya Sharale Rav Dimi Bar Levoye Lichpure Sali." Abaya permitted Rav Dimi Bar Levoye in this similar concept, in the similar case where it seemed that they had taken Shabbos prior, they davened Meir prior to nightfall of real Shabbos, and still he allowed them to defumigate the baskets, the wicker baskets. They used to burn things and have the smoke going to give it a proper smell. So how could he do that? How can you allow that? You see that they actually did real malacha. Okay, so the Gemara answers ahu ta'usa haviv ta'usa, that was a mistake. Okay, we'll see in a moment what the mistake was, but we'll see that the sky actually got dark with clouds, and they thought it was nighttime, and then they took in Shabbos, and they realized that an hour later the night cleared, and it was no longer dark, so they realized they had taken Shabbos in an inappropriate way, meaning it wasn't really Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "Hu ta'usa havya." But Tuusa Mimahadra, is Tuusa enough to go back? Vidan said, one time it happened to us where the sky got knotted in clouds, it got very dark. And everyone thought it was dark. And that was the opposite case where they actually davened Ma'ariv of Motzei Shabbos and took out Shabbos on Shabbos. And what happened? Everyone went home. And the clouds dispersed. The sun shone, and they realized it's still Shabbos. Okay, they asked Rabbi Amar, and he said, since they already davened, and we don't make them daven again. So you see what? You see that that for Te'usa, that we're not going to make you go back and daven. It's considered a good davening. Right? So the Gemara answers no. That's Shani Tzibur the Tzibur, the congregation did it as a whole, so we're not going to make them go back. But a Yachid who just davened B'Yachidus, we are going to make him daven again. Okay? So now the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Chiya bar Avin, Rav Tzali Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. We said that Rav davened the prayer for Shabbos before Shabbos started. And Rav Yoshia Matzli Shel Motzei Shabbos B'Shabbos, he said the tefillah of Arvis Balayla, Arvis and Motzei Shabbos before Shabbos was taken out. It was still light out. So the Gemara says, Rav Tzali Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. We want to know, Aymer Kedusha Lakais, did he in fact go and say Kiddush after taking in saying the tefillah of Shabbos, or Friday night Shabbos, when it was still light out? Or did he not? So Tashma come in here, Damar of Nachman, Amar Shpul, Mispala Adam Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. One can daven the prayer of Shabbos on Erev Shabbos, Vaymer Kedusha Lakais, and he could say the Kiddush when he comes home. Okay, before it gets dark. The Hilchasik of saying the halachas like that. Rav Yoshia, we said Matzli Shal Motzei Shabbos B'Shabbos. He said the tefillah of Ma'ariv, which was the post Shabbos davening, when it was still light out. So the Gemara wants to know, Eimer Havdalah, Kaisa Eimer Havdalah. Did he say Havdalah before it got dark? Tashma coming here, Damar Revuda, Amar Shmuel, Mispal Adam Shal Motzei Shabbos B'Shabbos. One can that's a Shabbos when it's still light out on Shabbos. But Eimer Havdalah Lakais, he could do have say Havdalah. Amar Rav Elazar Rechanina, Amarav B'tzad Amud Zeh, next to this pillar, Hispala Rishmol Rav Yossi Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. We have a testimony that Rishmol, the son of Rav Yossi, davened the Shabbos davening when it was still light out, it was still Erev Shabbos. Kiyasa Ula Amar, when Ula came along, he said no, B'tzad Tamara have it. But it was next to a date tree, next to this specific date tree, and not next to any pillar. You got the whole story wrong. It wasn't Rishmol Bar Yossi, it was Bar Yossi. It was the son of Yossi. It wasn't Shabbos on Erev Shabbos, Shabbos b'Shabbos. Okay, so in the event, you seem to have gotten the whole story wrong. And the Gemara continues. Tfilas ha'erev ein lekeva. We said in the Mishnah that Tfilas ha'erev has no set time. We'll discuss now the certain ambiguousness in the fact that it's listed like that instead of saying you have the whole night to do it. So the Gemara says, "My ein lekeva." What does this mean that it's not set? That he one could daven the whole night, Ma'ariv. Say it clearly. Don't be so ambiguous. And just say that one could daven Ma'ariv the whole night. So what does it mean it has no set time? It has no set time. This is in line, as we're going to see in a moment, with the machlokes about whether Arvis is Rishus or not. Now, Taisus explains, Shita Taisus is not that Ma'ariv is Rishus, it's only if you will to daven Ma'ariv. There's a responsibility to daven Ma'ariv. The question is if it's a chiyuv like the same as Shachris and Mincha. Okay? This guy machlokas. So this our Mishnah seems to be giving a psak halacha that Ma'ariv is a rishus. We had this earlier in the Masechta, and that's why it said the Rabbanan said that Chayav Misa, one who goes home and doesn't go straight into his into the base marriage to learn a little bit into the Ma'ariv, because he'll have the oinus shina. We said the hardest form of onus, and the sleep will overtake him for his 5-minute map, and he'll miss mishma. So we said that you should go right into the base marriage to learn at night, right? So the concept is that our Mishnah is in line with the opinion that says the Arvis is a Rishus. Why? Because the language of Tfilas Arv Ein Lekeva has no set time means to see it's trying to imply, it's trying to hint to the fact that it's not as set as Shachris and Mincha. Okay, so the Gemara says that's the deal. Come on, over Tfilas Arvis Rishus. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Tfilas Arvis Rav Gamliel Amar Chova. Rav Gamliel's opinion it's a chova, it's a responsibility, just like Shachris and Mincha. Rishu Amar Rishus. Rishu says Rishus. Amar Abaya says Halacha K'divrei Amar Chova. The halacha is like the one who said it's a chova. V'Rama Amar Halacha K'divrei Amar Rishus. That the halacha is in fact like the one who says is rishus. I suggest we stop here, only because even though we're not at the bottom of the Amud, but this is the whole story that we're going to get into. I think that's it's worthwhile to hear it in its entirety. Okay, so we'll take it from Daf Chavches tomorrow.